countries have gravitated towards. But that also did have consequences. So, Jiho, I wanted to really pick your brain on, what you guys thought initially when, P to E was in that kind of mindset of playing to earn for an income, and then what you guys thought about in regards to how that would have impacted your game economy, which I know you guys, it was a game, right? Nobody's really expecting it. So, how you guys tried to tackle that?
It's definitely an interesting chain of events, right? Like, so what did we set out to do, right? We set out to build a game with property rights where you own every single thing in the game, right? From your characters to the items to the in-game resources to the game itself, right? Through the access token. And some of the emerging characteristics of this are when you give people freedom and property rights, right? Like you basically create a real economy. In a real economy, right? Right, like if there's sufficient value being generated, and you have an awesome population of people, right? There are opportunities for earning, and this is what the media really focused on, right? And it became part of the Axie brand, right? Like play and earn, play to earn, whatever. But yeah, as you say, that does have consequences where, right, people come in to the ecosystem, right, just expecting to earn, right? It has to be, that can be a hook, but people have to come in and stay for the gameplay, for the community, right? Like for some of the other benefits, right? They have to switch from a, right, like taking mindset to, right, like building together mentality, right? Where it's okay, right? Like, so, but that's what we're starting to see with the guild model, right? Is the guild model where people are just, right, like getting people to play the game, farm tokens, and sell them, right? That in itself, right? If everyone is doing that, that doesn't work, right? But if the guilds are, right, educating people, turning them into amazing citizens who understand the benefits of blockchain technology, who are built making content, art, making tutorials, right, spreading a positive atmosphere, right, like using the Ronin wallet, eventually using Ronin transactions, right. There are a lot of things that the right, that the guild members, you know, can add to the ecosystem. We just need to harness them, unlock them, and show them the right direction. Right? It's an educational challenge. We have 50% of our players who are entirely new to blockchain. That's an amazing opportunity, but it also, right, it creates educational overhead where there's a lot of work to be done, and we can't do that alone. Sky Mavis will never be able to do all the work that's needed for this ecosystem alone. We have to ask the community for help.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really hard, right, to just out and out, as you mentioned, to just out and out just say, yeah, we'll just add a ton of burn mechanisms, right? Because that might impact the future state of Origin. So, I mean, I I want to ask this question, and you can be as vague as you want to be, but a lot of people are wondering, especially for SLP in general. Is there plans for SLP in Origin, and are there plans to have any sort of mechanism, whether it's burning or a sync or anything like that, to actually curb that mint?
Sure. Yeah. So, right, like balancing this has to come from two mechanisms, right? Like one is increasing or decreasing the emissions of SLP and other in-game resources, and the other is, right, adding more demand sinks. So, yeah, it's really important for Origin to, right, like be a tool. Origin will add a lot of levers, right? So, right, Axie upgrading, right, like kind of cosmetics, loot boxes, and yeah, so yeah, I would say like Origin is definitely going to be really important to balancing it out, but it also needs to be done very carefully, right? Just because the market is very volatile in the short term, it doesn't actually mean that, like, right, like uh right, like it doesn't mean that we should try to rush and do things that are actually going to ruin the ecosystem. Like poor, like rushed, sloppy work, right, can kill a game, right? So you only have one chance to launch something and make a first impression. So we also have to make sure that, right, like we're right, we're not letting the market determine our actions, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. And I have a question, kind of in the same regard. I usually compare the in-game economy kind of like to a country where Sky Mavis is like the central bank, and the central bank has a lot of levers they can push and pull to affect the economy. And typically, central banks, they target certain inflation rates. And my question to you is: does Sky Mavis target any specific economic indicators or any specific economic metrics? Like, is there an SLP price that you guys trying to stabilize that? Is there a burn to mint rate that you all try to aim for? What are the targets internally that you all look at to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, there are a lot of different things that come into making our decisions, right? So, right, there's future growth expectations, right? How many axes we think need to be bred over the next 12 months, right? So that's one thing that we look at. We look at like, okay, what is the ideal mint to burn ratio based on what our future growth expectations are, and what the current demand is, right? So we're looking at, okay, right, like how many axes are being bought per day, how many axes are being listed per day, what percentage of the Axie population is actually listed on the marketplace. So one thing that we've noticed, and that the community might have noticed too, right, is ever since we tripled the breeding fee in December, right, so number of Axies being bred per day dropped by a lot, but the amount of SLP being burned per day actually stayed stable. This means that, right, so like SLP burn was stable, but Axie breeding was dropped, right? And so basically, there have been less Axies that have been available on the marketplace to buy. Right, so we've actually seen we see that right now as a healthy development, right? Whether that has an impact on, right, floor prices, whatever, that also has to deal. It also has to do with demand, coming from the community. So yeah, like there are certain metrics that we look at when we're balancing. It's hard to do price targeting, or I actually believe that central banks shouldn't be doing inflation rate targeting, and that they actually don't have too much control over inflation rates, right? Just like now, right? Like inflation is 7%, the central bank targets 2%, right? Like in many cases, the central banks are actually takers of economic activity, and I actually believe that their control over modern day economies is exaggerated. Like governments like to say that they have a lot of control, so people like depend on them. But and in many ways, the governments are actually more like passive backseat drivers.
You know what's interesting to that regard? I think about that idea all the time, and it kind of having like this reflective tethering to Axie, and the reason why I say that, and would love to get your thoughts. Like we see very often, like you can propose a potential burn mechanism or an idea over Twitter, and if you like use words like like paying a fee to like bridge SLP off the platform and things of that sort, people automatically yell to the word decentralization and yell to the hills and saying, "Oh, this shouldn't be like a government, and I shouldn't be penalized for this, that, and the third." But as soon as you see the price of a currency like SLP do, a major dip, the first thing that like the general public is also like, "Hey, Sky Mavis, even though you're not our government entity because we want all this decentralization, we also want you to step in and save us." Like it's like a double edged. It feels like a double edged sword sometimes when you're talking about these like tokenomics related perspectives. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, right, like this at the end of the day is a community driven game. Sky Mavis, we're part of the community, right? We happen to be community members that, right, like we can dedicate our entire lives to Axie, whereas, right, many others, right, are more like volunteers. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is a community driven project. So yeah, it's an interesting paradox, right? But I mean, I think people are right to uh, expect Sky Mavis to work really hard for the ecosystem. But yeah, there are certain things, right? Like the global economy, the crypto stuff, right? Like uh, a lot of that stuff we can't control, right? Like it can't be Axie saving the entire crypto market like we did in July every time, right? Like sometimes, right? Like uh, sometimes stuff that's out of our control is going to impact us, right? And that's hard for human beings, right? That type of dynamic is hard for humans to accept. They want to feel like, right, like everything can be controlled and everything has a solution. But sometimes you just have to, right, like buckle down and get through it. Some things are more like an act of nature, like a snowstorm or a blizzard, where we need to huddle up for warmth and get through, a winter.
Awesome. And we're about halfway through, and I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. I know we could probably talk about the economy all day, but I wanted to talk about a recent update, and I thought it was incredibly exciting. It's the new, I don't know the exact title, but it's basically the new game developers program that Axie released. Essentially, that they'll give grants to people who want to build and maybe make little mini games and stuff to support Axie Infinity, and they could do it on the Roan network. I think that's incredibly, incredibly exciting. So I just wanted to see, how long has this been in the works for? What's your like specific hopes and dreams for this? And have you already received a lot of grants incoming for this, or has there been a little bit of a waiting game from developers to see what other people are doing?
Yeah, so this is the Axi Builders Program. We launched it a couple of days ago. Right, Axie is a community-driven and a community-built game. So this program is to get us closer to that future and to really empower the community to build amazing stuff on top of Axie. This program is primarily geared towards like building game-like experiences on top of Axie. Right, so yeah, right, we're seeing a bunch of awesome applications coming in. I think the last time I checked, we were at 500 plus applications. So yeah, like we're seeing an incredible response from the community. We've known from the early days that people want to build stuff on top of Axie. We've seen many community tools. We've seen mini games in the past. But there are a lot of questions around like what are the permissions, what are the API, basically how do we get all the tools needed to start building. So also part of this program was to consolidate all the tooling so people know like right where to get the Axie images and animations and stuff like that. So it also right just make that super clear, and then to also have the a grant system. I think the grant system should not also only be seen as right like a way to get money from Sky Mavis, but it should also be seen as like a mark of approval, right, where your project has been vetted. I've talked to people at the Ethereum Foundation, right? And the main reason that you get an Ethereum Foundation grant is that, right, people you see it as kind of a badge of honor. So I think that's also going to be part of, the cachet of the program.
To kind of keep that same momentum going, and I'll kind of express, some thoughts from the wide-ranging Axie community. There are a ton of, I wouldn't say a ton, but there's definitely a fair amount of content creators in Axie who feel like they've staked their claim. They put in enough time, energy, and effort. And sometimes, they definitely feel like they would love to see a bit more love from Sky Mavis, whether it's a simple retweet or acknowledging content creators a bit. And I feel like during the time period where we saw the Axie Infinity airdrop going to a lot of the OGs and a lot of these decentralized tools and mechanics being created, the unsung hero as to why a lot of the growth happened, was content creators. And a lot of content creators felt incredibly jaded, by the fact of there not really being anything out in this slow process. So just wanted to get your thoughts on how content creators are going to be able to impact the ecosystem moving forward. And if there is a plan to launch some things. I know you said a creator code is in the works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, content creators are one of the pillars of the ecosystem. I think they're the lifeblood of the community. You guys have done amazing work to help Axie get to this scale. We definitely want to have more of an organized process around supporting content creators. We're doing a lot of research. We've talked to the people who have built some of the largest content creator programs in the world. So we're working on it. I think like the idea, initially would be to roll out something that's more lightweight and to add further complexity over time to it, right? So that might be something like, okay, rolling out a creator code and then, right, like maybe adding more on top of it, right, where you might have like different groups of creators that are specialized in different types of content, or different tiers based on engagement and kind of like commitment and what people have done. So Yeah, it's something that we're looking at, right? So the current, right, this was more of a technical builders program, but yeah, we want to have like a creators program, right? So yeah, we're really excited about launching that, and I think we're shooting to have big progress on that around the time of Origin launch, so that, right, the creators who are helping us spread Origin to an entirely new audience will feel like they're part of the team.
Appreciate it. I want to say this. Anyone who is requesting currently, please be patient. The last 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to bring people up on the stage to be able to ask very open-ended, transparent, and respectful questions to JIHO in respect to his time, his energy, his effort. Having him here is an incredible honor. And I want to just kind of continue moving the conversation forward in the same way. In a world where now we have this beautiful ecosystem of Ronin, and it's going to be very much insane over these last couple of months. Staking rewards have been going out to those who've been farming Ronin. Is there any insider updates you could give us on what the Ronin chain has in store for us, whether it be multiple games coming in the future, the token actually being provided out into the ecosystem? We'd just love to hear your thoughts there.
I'm super excited for Ronin. If you're not following it already, follow Ronin Network on Twitter. And yeah, we have some Ronin related releases coming up. The Ron token launch, I think people are super excited, especially those that have been farming. I think we have almost 200,000 people who are farming Ron right now, so it's a big part of the community actually, and yeah, I couldn't be more excited about it. So yeah, I think, right, the grand picture and vision for Ronin is to become a scaling solution for premier NFT experiences, whether they be games or other types of content. And yeah, we want to make progress towards that in 2022, right? So start to onboard and build with and alongside the developers that are building the next amazing experiences that are going to be unlocked and enhanced by NFTs, right? Everyone says that they're looking for the next Axie. We believe that, right, the next big NFT hit will be built on top of Ronin.
Yeah, and I have more of a statement, not really a question. And I want to throw it over to Herm to get his thoughts on the Roan network. One of the interesting parts I thought about with Roan was that we all thought that there would be third-party developers coming on and creating games on the Roan network right away. On the flip side of that, Axie actually came out with the Builders Program. So a lot of the things that'll be built on the Roan network at the beginning will be community driven, just like how the Roan tokens were farmed by the community as well. So I thought that was actually a great initiative and perfect timing with the Builders Program to come out right before the Roan launch. So we have a whole bunch of community driven developers working on the Roan network. So I thought that was incredibly exciting. And Herm, I want to throw it over to you to get your thoughts on the Roan network.
Well, from what I'm hearing, and AJ, thank you for throwing it to me. It sounds like a grassroots version of Steam. As far as what we're building, as with the type of games that could be built. And my question for those games, are you looking for games that are of are Axie canon or Axie related, or can these games, can they be kind of a different approach entirely for the Runner Network? Uh-oh. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I heard. So sorry, the last part was a little bit jumbled. So
All right, all right. So my question was, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you are taking a very grassroots approach to making the Rona network the successor of Steam, which is excellent. But with the games that you're looking to have developed, do they have to be Axie canon or Axie related, or can they be games that are created from anything or everything?
sure, yeah, makes sense. I think we're gonna see a bit of both. I think, right, a lot of some of the initial Axie related experiences are going to be kind of more grassroots from the community. But yeah, we are interested in, right? Like if someone is going to bring other IP onto Ronin, like it better be way bigger than Axie, if that makes sense. We're not trying to like amplify like someone's small project necessarily, unless like right like the Ronin community has like a huge exposure to it, if that makes sense. So I think right if it's going to be like IP outside of Axie, right? Like I think my bias is towards right making it something that like has a global fan base that we can onboard onto the Ronin network.
That's awesome. And maybe I'm answering my own question here, right? Because it all makes sense, especially as you talked about the expansive growth that you guys had in the summertime, scaling up, truly just building your infrastructure out, right, with the Ronin network, and then focusing on Origin and land play. But some people would argue, right, that like the game can be seen as a little stale at this point, right? So, can you just talk about that prioritization of infrastructure? I mean, it makes sense to me, but like for the people that are like, oh, the game, just feels like going through the motions at this point. That's something that's kind of top of mind for a lot of
For
people as
sure.
well.
I mean, the current game, right? The current product that you're playing was built by, right, like about 10 people or 6 to 10 people in 2019. So a couple of years ago, right? Some of you guys were in like middle school back then. So yeah, so basically, like the current product doesn't reflect what our team is capable of building. Because Axie is now famous and Sky Mavis is now huge, and we've changed gaming forever. This is an undisputed fact by the entire gaming industry, whether they have a positive opinion of us or not. Right? Axie has changed how games will work forever. This has happened. So because of this, right, we now have amazing teammates that have a lot of skill and experience like building amazing gaming experiences. So yeah, like right, that's why we're focused on Origin, right? We know that Axie needs to evolve in terms of the gameplay that's offered. But at the same time, right, like we could have never gotten to this point, right? Like us focusing on Ronin didn't really take too much, right? It didn't slow down Origin development. These are different things. But the issue is, right, would Axie have survived 1 year, right, without an infrastructure upgrade that allowed it to grow and allowed us to become, right, like famous within the world of gaming, right? Like probably not. And we wouldn't have been able to attract the same talent without that growth. We wouldn't have been able to see these amazing, content creators and community members come into the ecosystem. So, right, without focusing on scaling last year, like probably like our project, right, like, we would be behind everybody. But now, right, because we focus on infrastructure, that also like has, allowed us to add amazing talent to our game teams. So it all really fits together, right? So it's like we have to get traction, we have to get success in order to attract the right people into our community, as well as the people, right, the teams that are building the games.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. you gotta build a foundation, right, in order to scale. So that makes perfect sense.
And Anish, just to like touch on it really quick, if you
Yeah.
think about where Axie was when I joined the game, the Ronin network hadn't launched yet. So anytime I went on the marketplace to post an Axie for sale, I was paying like a $40 gas fee, and then you're paying a fee. You're paying the fee because it's on the marketplace. But if you ended up taking an Axie down because you overlisted it too high or you fucked the listing up, excuse my language, you're in a space where you're spending 50, $100 in gas fees pre-Ronin. And that went to zero once Ronin launched, and it allowed for that scaling to happen. And if you look at the infrastructure of Axie, I don't see if there's a world where we have 2 million plus people playing the game, or we have millions of people that are able to earn through scholarshiping programs. If you never reach the point of Ronin Network, I didn't even have the Loot Squad or a single scholarship program out, before Ronin Network came out because it was too expensive to run them. So I think like big hats off to the Sky Mavis team for that, because Ronin, that layer 2 solution, really changed the shape of how Axie and future play to earn games will grow. Of course, there's Immutable. You could do it on Matic as well, but like Ronin is an ecosystem, bred and built for gaming at the core. And eventually, when it expands, I think there's going to be a world where tons and tons of games are looking to onboard users into Ronin. If you take into account, hey, you get your game on Ronin, you automatically have 2 million plus willing players looking to jump into your game at the early onset. And that alone is a cultural scalable value add that you're not going to be able to get in all places.
Yeah, there are so many game developers that want to build on top of Ronin, right? They're reaching out in droves. But yeah, like we right, like there scalability for blockchains has not been solved yet, right? So, and I don't think anybody is pretending that it has. So, if you want something like Ronin to work, right, you have to make some trade-offs, right? Right now, Ronin is not as open as it could be, but that is all to make sure that Axie can actually work, right? Like Ethereum, it was very, very open, very decentralized, right? But Axie didn't work there, right? So, uh, you sometimes, right, you have to do things that seem a little bit like against the ideals of the movement, right now. That's basically right, like, right, not anybody there's like a process to being able to build on top of Ronin, right? Like, not, you can't just like deploy a contract where we've seen recently, right, with the sunflower, the Teletubby whatever game on Polygon, right, that like, yeah, if you just like let anybody deploy a contract, it can actually take down your network. I think then they ended up having to like halt it or do something like, right, like, that ended up being centralized anyway, to basically, right, like fix that issue. So it's complex, right? Like, but yeah, like generally, right, like we're building towards a future where we have, Sky Mavis is just one of many content creators and game studios building on top of both Axie and Ronin.
This is like music to my ears as we've like expanded through this conversation. But I want to throw it back over to AJ for one final question, and then we are going to pick some people from the audience to get up here to chat with JIHO, get this audience really open. I think this conversation has been incredibly open-ended, and we've asked some tough questions. We've asked some questions that really get to the core of some things that are happening with Axie, but it's going to be very important and integral to get community perspective as well. We've been building as a community from day one. So AJ, I want to turn it over to you, one final question, and then let's get some community perspectives up here.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're in the audience and want to come up, definitely go ahead and request now. I'll ask the question so we can get you on stage and all set. So my question is about the long term. We know Roan and all of that is a part of the infrastructure of Axie. We know the gameplay improvements will be coming this year with Origin and Land. But when you zoom out a little bit and you look 1 to 3 to 5 years out, what are the big things that you and the team are kind of thinking about as far as Axie and the game and the network and the community?
Sorry, can you say the last part again?
Yes, my question was really just around the long term. When you think 1 to 3 to 5 years out, what are some of the things that you and the team at Sky Mavis are thinking about currently? We know the infrastructure with Ron has been sort of fixed, and we know that you all are focusing on gameplay this year. But when you zoom out and go longer term, what are some of the big issues that you're looking to solve and to think about?
I think, right, a lot of it is, okay, how do you coordinate a community of millions of people that are collectively owning and building a game together? I think, right, like that is almost one of the fundamental issues that we're looking to solve. I think also it's like, how do we bring the Axie experience like into the physical world? Right, so we've started to see, right, like Axie meetups, people hanging out with Axie community members in their local towns and cities. So yeah, I think that's gonna, like, the long term is right, like I think really focused on the community. Like, what does the Axie community become long term? I think that it's starting to become something more like a global nation of people with different values, convictions, appearances, right, levels of income, but also like, right, this shared vision of a game that's built alongside anyone, anywhere. So yeah, I think that's, I think that's what we're gonna see. I think a lot of it, right, like, and this is where the community, I think, is also really interested in, is right, like, what are all the different ways that people are going to spend money in these digital economies that are going to make them sustainable in the long run, right? There's a lot of experiments that remain to be done. I'm super bullish on it because, right, like, I spend a lot, right? I don't actually buy like skins, right? Like, I don't spend money in Pokemon Go, but I do spend money on Pokemon cards, right? Why? And I don't buy Pokemon cards to try to flip them, but the fact that I know that I could is actually what, justifies it in my mind that I can spend, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on a Pokemon card. I think NFTs are just doing that to digital items, right? So we're going to see these collectors, these people that have spent money on skins, on uh, you know, in games where they don't actually own anything. Typically that's only 1 or 2% of gamers, right? But they're the ones who actually make, like, for example, free to play games work. I think that we're going to see a mass exodus of that type of spender into ecosystems like ours, and that's actually what's going to, right, like, make the economy work in the long term. We're still in the transition. We're still in a transitionary phase, right? So this creates vulnerability and a chance for volatility.
JIHO, I just want to tell you, I feel seen. Thank you for that. To you speaking about Pokemon cards in that way, you put into words exactly why I've been buying cards all these years. Thank you for that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I grew up, right. Like, we buy Pokemon cards because we need them, right? Not because we're trying to make money off them, but because people think like that. Yes, you can make money off them, right? So there has to be that, just like, collector's instinct driving the entire economy of the ecosystem, right? And the awesome thing is, Axie is beautiful. Axie has a huge community where you can flex in. Therefore, we're the best prepared for this transition to a spending economy, right? Earning has to be subsidized by spending. Where does that spending come from, right? That's the fundamental question that we're all thinking about 24/7 together, right? The good thing is, we're gonna figure it out together as a community, and we all understand the issues, right? The interesting thing is, right, like, I think, like, a lot of products and a lot of communities, they don't even understand their problems and understand the things that they have to solve in the coming years. I think we're laser focused on, right, we understand what the issues are and we understand how to fix them. We just have to deploy and execute on the solutions. So as an entrepreneur, as someone who's building products, that's a great position to be in.
I think that's awesome. And we have about 10 minutes left, so I do want to get time to go to some of the speakers that joined us on stage. But first, I definitely want to shout out one of the community members that's been vital for Axie Affinity, Dave vs. Axie. I know you just became a father, so congratulations on that. And I noticed you still somehow found time to join our stage. So this is me saying congrats from everyone in the Axie community. That's awesome. That's awesome. And with that being said, I want to throw it over to Starship Guild to maybe ask a quick question.
Hey guys, Brycent and team, thank you so much for this Twitter Spaces. I think I speak for everybody in saying you guys are wonderful content creators in the blockchain gaming community, and we appreciate you tremendously. JIHO, hi, my name is Rockwell. I'm the co-founder of Starship Guild, where we have about 2,200 scholars that are we're helping prosper through blockchain gaming. Scaling our community has been a wild ride, and it's about to get crazier as we tokenize our guild and go after some really big dreams. First and foremost, I just really want to say thank you to you and the rest of the Sky Mavis team for this ecosystem that we've been able to flourish in. Frankly, it's been one of the greatest adventures of my life, and I'm just incredibly grateful. As you might imagine, you don't get to 2,200 scholars without building your own software, including things like automated payroll. It turns out, QuickBooks doesn't integrate with Axie, unfortunately. We'd love to offer these tools that we built to the rest of the community, but we're really unclear about what kinds of software Sky Mavis allows, like what kinds of monetization are acceptable, who we can engage with on the Sky Mavis team to discuss some of these issues. And so here's my question. What kind of advice could you give to an organization like ours that wants to be a productive partner in the Axie ecosystem, but isn't quite getting the support we need from the tools and API Discord chat and some of the current documentation that's available? We've applied to the Axi Builders Program. It seems like that's more geared towards people building mini games than tooling, but I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think there's a lot more that we can do to support guilds. So yeah, that's something that we're looking at, right? I think also having, right, like some of these automated payouts. I think right, like you're mainly like seeing pain points. You feel like you might be able to address them yourselves, but perhaps these are things that need to be addressed at the right, like at the Axie level or the Sky Mavis level, where right, like we're building our own, right, like scholarship tool, right, we're working on making it right easier to export like all of your, like, I don't know, Ronin on transaction data as well. So I think those are also things that we need to solve. Thanks for applying to the builder program. I think we'll also, right, like we'll see a lot of stuff there that doesn't necessarily fit, right, like the or gaming experience kind of definition. But I think it's also like important that yeah, for us to look through those kinds of requests. So yeah, like, thanks for thank you for everything that you do. And I would say, right, like to also make sure that you're kind of like educating your scholars and turning them into, right, like uh right, like productive and happy members of the Axie Nation. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, part of our training infrastructure is very much teaching basic financial education to our
Mm,
scholars because they don't really know about crypto. For a lot
mm,
of our scholars, their first bank account is the Ronin wallet, right?
mm.
Getting this kind of digital payment infrastructure is completely new to them. So I think one of the things that has been really critical in our own success is really laying that training and infrastructure foundation for scholars to come in and not only learn about the game, but learn about basic finance.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? I think that's a huge part of our mission, and that's also, right, like why, right, like there is value being created here because we're right, like if you believe that there is value when you teach someone about a new technology that's emerging, right, each and every one of these scholars, these guildmates, right, they're being empowered and going on a new life path. And right, it's just like a student. What is like the sustainability model of a school actually, right? Like, yes, you'll give free education, right, to people when they're young, because that value comes back when they go on to do amazing things in their lives. So I think that's right. That's also how we need to think about like scholars, right? Scholars are students. That's why they're called scholars. That's where the entire, right, the wording came from, is right, like Axie is a way to learn about Web3. It wasn't about earning at that time because you actually couldn't earn. There was no profit margin on the marketplace. So it's like, what was the benefit of Axie before you could actually make money? It was actually learning about Web3. And we thought that that was the original benefit that we could offer through our game. So yeah, think of them as students, right? And then right, Axie, if Axie is a school, you can also think of Axie as a school where we're teaching people about Web3 and what is the revenue model and the sustainability model for a school. Then you can also think about like how Axie can benefit from these scholarships in the long run. Does that make sense?
Totally, completely. Thanks so much, JIHO.
Awesome. I just want to say that was actually a really, really good question. So thank you so much for joining Starship Guild. And I think I want to throw it over in this order. I think it's who came first. Sassy, Steve, Ansel, and Venger.
Thanks so much, AJ, and good day to everyone, because I know everyone's calling in from all over the world because that's how big Axie is. I've been really excited to join in the Axie world, learning from Brycent and and I kind of have like, I like my two newbie questions kind of there. I love having a little newbiness to it. But I was just wondering, when will it be launching to the iPhone? I don't know if I missed this. I know I missed the opportunity to sign up for it, but having it on my iPhone, I love playing the game in general, but having it on my iPhone would be swell. So that's my first question. And I want to give you space to answer that one.
Yeah, that's really important. So right now, because Axie is in alpha, right, we're just on test flight in the App Store. So yeah, like once we get into Origin, well, it should be right that we're actually releasing it formally on the App Store. So that's basically right, like that's how early of a product and of a stage Axie is at right now. Is that right? We're still in technically we're still in alpha and we're not formally released on the app stores, despite the fact that we have around 3 million monthly active users. So.
Wow, that's going to be crazy. Because I've used a lot of different. I'm a beta tester for a lot of different things. So I've used TestFlight for a couple of different software apps on the store. So that's exciting for a lot of reasons because we're still early. Wow, exciting and terrifying, all at the same time. I love to hear that Ronin is like open to more games being built on it, and I love that there's so many gamers already reaching out. I guess as somebody who dreams of and is actively working to kind of create my own game around my characters and my personas, and as well as like maybe make it play to earn over time. Will Ronan be doing any programs to encourage new games from diverse communities or anything like that? Like any granting or like support programs that would connect them with devs and everything like that? Because I just think there's like a really huge opportunity here to continue expanding because there are so many people that are creating these scholarships that are bringing people out of poverty and things like that. There's just so much movement, especially in this alpha stage of the game. Just wondering if that is something that is in your minds, something that y'all are considering, because I think that would be a powerful opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Just like there is the Axi Builder Program, I think it makes sense to have like a builder program for the specifically focused on Ronin with grants and to make it, something that's empowering a very broad and diverse group of people, because that is the definition, right? Like diversity and decentralization go all together. So I think, right, like having a bunch of different types of developers building on top of Ronin is going to be really, really important. So.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's, AJ, we're jumping over to Ansel.
Yes, sir.
And then Steve, and then let's hit Lady Ranvor and finish with Avenger before we close out. Oh, actually, and Nash. I keep forgetting Nash. Sorry, Nash. We got to get Nash in there too somewhere.
Yeah, I guess I can jump in, and big thanks to Brycent for hosting this, and of course Jeff, JIHO. Like that's this is a crazy space to see it. What seems like all of my Twitter is in. So this is really, really cool. My question goes back to more of the big news that Microsoft dropped, and I'd just love to know kind of what the sentiment was inside of something like Sky Mavis when news like that, like the merger with Activision. Like, what was the sentiment inside Sky Mavis, and what do you guys read into that as being? Like, does this pose that future threat that maybe once upon a time, like Kodak felt with the digital camera race? I mean, Kodak was the first to build the digital camera, but they ultimately kind of failed at doing so, or they were ahead of their time. So what do you think these big companies like Microsoft or Activision see you as? And kind of the reverse, what do you see a move such as that one being for you guys?
So let's start from the highest level. What is the fundamental problem in gaming today? Fundamental problem is that the majority of the value is not going to the people that are creating the majority of the value, right? The majority of the money in gaming is going to app stores, and it's going to game publishers, not even, right, the game developers. So I think that the old guard, they are starting to see that their business model is under attack. I think that they're going to try and do like more of what they've done to get, to this point. I think like, right, more generally, right, like what we're seeing is that gaming is going to be a lot bigger than it is right now in the future. It's an industry that just makes sense as we become a progressively more digitized and digital society. People are understanding that, right? So a gaming strategy, a metaverse strategy is becoming, right, like an important foundation for any large, super big, right, like trillion plus company. That's what we're starting to see. But we're also starting to see another trend, which is the rise of these grassroots internet communities. They're becoming really powerful. And I think that there's a war for the kind of the future, for the soul of the internet that's starting to happen. But I think that like communities like the Axie community are going to be underestimated, and the fact that we're the underdog in this fight is our biggest strength, right? So yeah, I see it as an opportunity. I see it as exciting. They're definitely a credible threat. But one of the issues with Axie is we don't have, right. We've become the top dog in the NFT space. So we don't actually have enemies within the NFT space that we can actually fight with right now. So then that the community starts like to fight with themselves. So I see the prospect of there being like much larger enemies for us to actually need to fight back against, right? Someone who stands as a foil or a mere contrast to our community. I think that's a positive development.
That's great. Now, that's exactly what I was looking for. Just a little bit of a glimpse inside the heads of Sky Mavis and what it all means, just to give us hopefully a little more clear ride of the future. But now I'll leave it there. I'd love to hear other people ask questions, but a big thank you again. This is fantastic.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that was an awesome question. I think the order now is Steve, Avenger, Nash. Sorry if I messed it up a little bit, but let's go with that.
Hey everyone, Brycent and JIHO. I'd just like to say thank you for embracing us into the community. We've been involved for about 150 days right now. We are Magic Wizard Guild, and we're now rebranding ourselves to Magic Wizard Tech. And as you know, my wife Daniela is a software developer, and we just put out some teasers today on Twitter of our guild management software. We also applied for the builder program, which we're happy you're doing. And really, my question is a little bit reflective of what Starship Guild said about, being involved in the API and getting more involved with Sky Mavis. So the question is, where do we fit in? And maybe we could have a centralized repository of where you could use a software developer, what products you're looking to build. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit, please.
Sorry, can you repeat the last part?
So the last part is the question really is kind of like we love the community of Axie. We have resources, as Danielle is a software developer, and we're just kind of see where we could fit in. Perhaps there could be like a central repository, a place for Sky Mavis to post software products that would help. And because obviously there might be some overlap. Starship Guild is building products for guild management. We're building products for guild management. So it would be nice to have kind of a central place where we know where we could fit into that.
I understand.
Did I stump you?
Yeah. So basically, right, like there is a lot of like redundant or like, right, like there are a lot of guilds that are all building the same tooling and automation stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it should be like for now, like kind of a free market where the community decides what's being built and what's being used. I'm not sure what Sky Mavis's role should be in curating that type of stuff. We don't even know everything that's out there. Maybe there is a way for us to figure that out as well. We also don't want to endorse stuff, because what happens if we endorse something that then that means that we have to basically audit every single thing that we endorse. So yeah, I think like the main issue is that there's because Sky Mavis doesn't provide the scholarship automation software, like everyone is having to build a different thing, and maybe like the community's time would be better spent like focusing on other stuff, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it might be helpful to know what Sky Mavis is planning to build for as far as guild management.
Yeah, that's also like, yeah, we're basically thinking about what basically it would be something that automatically splits the SLP between the master account and the scholar account, or I guess that's just computer language, language, right? So like the guild's account and the scholar's account. Yeah, so that it would basically to right for that and the tracking. So we're still figuring out whether it's good enough to release to the public. Because also it's like sometimes we build things and it's not good enough, and then we just don't release it. So that's also like a possibility.
Thank you for taking the questions.
Thanks. That was great. Let's throw it over to Avenger and then Nash.
All right. Well, I think that my question has already been answered because it's around the same things, except for I have just a small program. I've got 20 or so scholars. We've branched out into some other projects and whatnot. Just because the game, the whole idea of playing and earning is really a great and wonderful, fun idea. But when it comes down to management, especially like me, I'm the sole owner of this. I took out money out of the stock market to invest in everything, and trying to. I don't have the development skills to do, so I do everything manually. I'm using spreadsheets and all those kind of things, and so there's so many tools that are out there, but also when you think about the tools that are out there, it's like you have to put your secret phrase in to be able to go in and automatically pull stuff, and it's just like, well, I'm not trusting enough to trust anybody else to do that because I don't know how that is. So you already said that you guys don't want to go down the road of endorsing because you have to audit, which that makes sense. But I look at a program like ice poker. Like I can delegate my ice poker. I just literally put their ETH address in. It automatically does it. It automatically splits. I don't have to worry about if they're multi-accounting. I don't have to worry about that. The scare of multi-accounting is almost it's driven some people I know that are doing it all, but because there's, it really is the Wild West. I guess maybe it's just my idea of wanting to be more centralized to protect versus Big Brother. I don't know if it's what I'm saying is making sense, but I guess to put it into a question format, is there any kind of basic tools for people who don't have that software engineer on their team, that don't have that person that knows code on their team, or that's really new to all of this, that doesn't understand how those parts work, but want to be able to help train people? Because my guild is based around trying to be there for people. I want to be able to help improve them, teach them how to not just play a game, but how to play the game of life, how to succeed as people. And I've lost money because, there's been, my scholars get scammed, and I will give them back their money. They didn't know how to do that because I didn't know the tools that were available. So I'm asking for what tool. Well, I guess you already really answered that one, but that's kind of what my whole question was around, was the idea of, for those of us that don't have software developments, what tools are available outside of just manually going in and collecting and doing spreadsheets and getting it wrong, trial and error type of thing.
Maybe I'll let some of the other guild I don't run a scholarship because it's too hard, which I think is part of what you're saying, right? Is it takes a lot of time. So yeah, I think generally, basically, you've identified that running a scholarship is too hard for a majority of the people. And right, if but that could be also a good thing right now, right? Because it's also giving us time to build before the community kind of super scales up. So yeah, I'm not necessarily going to recommend any current ones. But yeah, I think some of the other guild managers in here might have some more insight into
I'll
that.
throw out my 2 cents real quick, and then I'll throw it over to Bryce for the real answer. So my 2 cents is that there are a lot of community-driven tools and applications and software that's been built to help smaller guild managers. So that's one thing I would look at. There's a lot of community members who've built some great things. You could look at Axie Tech for one example. But I'll throw it over to Bryce for the real answer.
No, I think you're pretty much spot on. I know Max Brand has built some stuff. Zerachi's, I think, was working on it or has built some tools that you can open source. Of course, you still need some level of dev help. Axie Tech right now is probably the closest thing to, in my opinion, a really full, well thought out solution with UI stuff. But I think the big thing for a lot of the smaller guilds and medium sized guilds who haven't reached the point yet where they need the tech scaling capacity to understand is that every single one of the guilds that are going out into the scene right now and raising money, whether it's YGG, Merit Circle, Loot Squad, or any other guilds, they've understood that once you get that technical moat solved, you can go and raise money. But the interesting thing around this kind of intricate situation is Axie Infinity, it isn't really up to them to provide us with guild solutions at this stage, because they're building out tech to solve major problems like fixing SLP and releasing the new game and getting land gameplay out. So we've had to be creative and come up with our own solutions and build our own products that move the space forward. If you need like an immediate solution, I would say Axie Tech is great. They have a really cool guild ecosystem. If you want to kind of get in there and dig around yourself, then I probably would go with like a Max brand tool or Zerachi's. I know even at Loot Squad, we're working on a way that other guilds would be able to join like our Loot Alliance and leverage our internal, botting system for their scholars to be able to do self payouts and things of that sort. But we're still, a fair amount of time away from reaching that. So I would just say, like, in the short term, it is incredibly painful. But once you do reach that scaling capacity, it allows you to turn your guild from a regular size company into, maybe a multi-million-dollar business. I hope that answers. I know it's unfortunate that there aren't more tools out, but I think we got to, like, guilds should share the brunt of the load in fixing some of the payout system requirements currently, with the current state of Axie needing to spend their dev time and energy on actually moving the game forward.
Sure, yeah, and I get that, and I understand that, and I guess the pain point's not so much because like right now it doesn't take me. I've got enough time in the schedule that I can utilize that one. I just, especially with some of the smaller ones, like where do you go and where is trustworthy? Because when you start looking at, you have to put in your private keys to be able to utilize an automation system. It's like, so what is actually, I guess the level of trust there when you're trying to build that out. So I guess that was more on my questions, not so much why isn't there tools? And I get that I would much rather the devs work on, the new gaming, because I'm honestly, I'm not even really worried about the SLP price, because it's the game first and foremost. The play and earn is just a side benefit to the whole fact of doing all this, because this is mind blowing. I've spent thousands of dollars to play video games. Even if I'm making $2 to play a game, that's more than I've ever made before 2020. So just was more of along the lines of not necessarily vetted ones, but at least ones that are not made by some Tom Harry.
Yeah,
So
eventually I can take it offline with you. I can have that discussion. Just DM me.
dope. Well, I want to be respectful of Gio's time. We've had him 13 minutes over. We have two more questions that I want to grab. One coming from Nash's Axie Farm first, and then we'll throw it over to Axie Squadron before we close out. So two more questions left.
Hey, thanks, Bryce. Guys, Nash here. Nash's Axie Farm. Hope everyone's having a good day. Good to speak with you, JIHO. So I want to ask a question on behalf of kind of the majority of the scholar community. A key word in the Axie space recently has been the word build. Keep building. Let's build together. Let's build a great game, great ecosystem. And a lot of people are kind of in Q4 of last year, we're a little fed up with the communication the dev team was putting out to the players. So here in Q1, it's actually been getting much better, which the players have been more vocal about. They're saying, hey, we understand it's getting better. So my question is, do you think we can get a company directory or something that shows us like the new hires on the team of Axie and Sky Mavis, so that we can be excited about the game and the people that are working on it and actually get to know them a little bit?
Yeah, it's something that we can, discuss with the recruiting and the HR department. Keep in mind that they already have, right, they're recruiting, like their primary focus is recruiting, right? So they have like basically super limited capacity, but yeah, there's some way to basically better introduce the new hires to the community. It's definitely something that we want to do. So yeah, like I think that feedback makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think like, right, like what we're seeing is last year, like for example, for my team, so last year, Alex, Xander, and I think, right, like at the beginning of 2021, Alexander and I, right, we were the only two members of our team. We weren't actually managing anybody. But now, right, like our team has in the short run, because right, you don't want untrained people who don't know what they're doing or who don't know what they're doing yet to be doing a lot of stuff. But then right, like what you start to see is that their output starts to like go exponential once they're onboarded. So that's what we're starting to see. So yeah, and I think that we can better, basically do a better job around right, like announcing these new hires to the community. um but yeah, doing it in a good way, and also right, like so everything is like a matter of priorities. So I think the recruiting team, right, that they're focused on recruiting. But yeah, I'll also keep that in mind. And I think we have a couple of new hires that will be like really significant and exciting, and will be introducing themselves to the community. I think it's also right, like at well level. Also, a lot of our teammates, right, I think it would be mainly maybe only for the English speaking teammates. So yeah, that's it's definitely a good point that we'll look into.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's throw it over to Axie Squadron and then Hantao, and then we will close out.
Hey, good morning, everybody, or good night, depending on what part of the world you're at. My name's Axie Squadron. I'm based in Guatemala. I just joined guilds with one of my good friends who introduced me to the game. But we're actually doing something that like most people I haven't really heard of. Like, what do you? Is that something that you guys frown upon since it is like a decentralized game, or is that something that you guys want to see expanded more in the future?
That's
Kind of
important. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Like, I have a dream that there will be an Axie compound or an Axie center in every city, every village. A lot of them, right, like will be, I think, built by the communities, right? And yes, these places should be places where people can go, show up, learn about Axie, figure out what it's about, and start playing, maybe get onboarded. So I think that's a great idea. Right, like this is a movement, this is a revolution. So right, having like almost like recruiting centers, just like they have army recruiting centers, I think is really important.
Is that something you will eventually have will Sky Mavis get involved in something like that? Like if they see someone or some type of guild, getting to the point where they're onboarding a certain amount of numbers, would Sky Mavis be involved to help, or should that be just guild run?
I think a combination. I think that yeah, like Sky Mavis could, or the Axie, right? Like there are different ways, right? There are different structures or organizations, right? There's Sky Mavis, but there's also the Axie DAO, right? There's the ecosystem fund. So yeah, like I think building out our capacity to help with stuff like that, I think makes sense in the coming years.
Dope. Appreciate the question. Let's jump over to Hantao. I know, Gio, I appreciate all of your time, but just want to be able to give you some time back because I know you have to get back to building. Contrary to popular belief, I still love the word build. So if anyone in here doesn't like the word build, get out. Hantao, what's up?
Yo, what's up? Thank you, Bryce, and thank you, JIHO. So I wanted to ask a little bit more of a complex question. So as Axie Affinity, being one of the leaders, building an economy, especially a really fleshed out one, is very difficult. Who do you think the top contributors are right now in terms of like making sure that it's very fleshed out, self-sufficient, and stable? Is it like the publishers? Is it the guilds, etc.? And then number two, like what else do you think is missing in terms of making a stable economy?
So, right, like a stable economy stems from like a combination of things, right? One is like growth, and then the other is willingness to spend for fun, right? Or to spend without expectation of financial gain. So developers, the game design team, also right, the game economy team, and also yeah, the guilds and the influencers, the content creators, everyone who's and just everyone who's onboarding people in their day-to-day life. I think it's also right, like key to continue to attract and increasingly start to attract right the type of person who will spend money on Pokemon cards just for right the love of collecting rather than right expectation of gain. So yeah, I'm really trying to make sure that people understand that, and yeah, so I think that's really key.
Awesome. And with that, I think we want to close it out here. Thanks so much, Jiho, for joining us today. Thanks to all the speakers, Sassy, Dash.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
You're forgetting the best part. We only got this guy for a couple of more seconds.
Okay.
Jiho, I need you to give us a cameo to close it out. Come on, hype me up right now. Give me something.
So yeah, I mean, I think people have seen that our capacity is increased recently. We've had like a flurry of launches and announcements, and yeah, like I think January is going to be super exciting. Yeah, like so yeah, our next big thing is the Ron launch. So start like mentally preparing yourself for this to basically like make sure that this is an amazing event that brings amazing new community members into our crypto. Will, because like token launches are interesting, a lot of crypto will be like looking at our community, and I think we need to make sure that our community is representing us and representing this community super well, this ecosystem well, and it's going to be a big opportunity to show the rest of the world what we're about. So yeah, I think like I talked about this a little bit earlier, is like every single one of you is a representative of the Axie Nation, of the Ronin ecosystem. And the things that you do and say, they matter. So yeah, I'm super excited to keep building with you and start mentally preparing yourselves and thinking about, how are you going to help make the Ronin launch successful? Because I know a lot of you guys are farming it, so our incentives are totally aligned here. And with that, yeah, I think I'll leave you guys with that.
That was enough for me. I'm already shaking in my chair. I almost fell out of my chair when you said the word January. Probably nothing. But guys, again, I need to see some 100 spams, the emotes. We had Gio here for an hour and 22 minutes. He was incredibly transparent, answered the hard questions, answered the easy ones, and really listened to the community in a space where it's been polarizing, having to deal with both sides of the spectrum of building this entire ecosystem and also trying to carry the weight of nations as we continue to build this place of play and earn. So Jiho, I want to thank you again for this honor of being able to speak with you. Hantow, Sassy, Nash, Ansel, Axie Squadron, Steve, AJ, Anish, Avenger, Herm, and everyone else who attended in the audience. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. We are back on Monday. But until then, become the impossible. Take care.